Hello, Virgo. There is a particular kind of silence that lives inside a phone that hasn't rung yet. Not an empty silence, a charged one. The kind that belongs to a moment when something is already in motion on the other end of a connection, already being formed, already being gathered into words, already moving through the invisible distance between two people toward the moment when it finally arrives. And some of you are living inside that silence right now, feeling it without perhaps being able to name it. That low, almost electric hum of something approaching, something that someone in your life has been carrying privately and is in the process of deciding or has already decided to bring to you. If this found you today, I think some part of you has already been listening for something without knowing exactly what it was you were listening for. A theme appearing strongly in this reflection is the energy of communication that has been forming beneath the surface of a situation for longer than it has been visible. There are words that take time to find their speaker, truths that require a particular interior readiness before they can be released into the shared space between two people. And a pattern worth noticing here is that the things most worth hearing, the communications that carry genuine weight, that arrive not from obligation or impulse, but from something deeper and more considered, almost always travel a longer interior road before they reach the moment of expression. What is approaching may be exactly that kind of communication. Something that was not assembled quickly, something that has been held with a seriousness proportionate to what it means, something arriving now because the person carrying it has finally reached the point where holding it privately costs more than the vulnerability of offering it. An energy that may be present for many of you is the specific quality of a moment suspended between not yet knowing and being about to know. And this suspension, this particular threshold between the silence before and the clarity after, has a texture that is entirely its own. It is not the dull, directionless quality of ordinary waiting. It is more awake than that, more sensitized. The way the air feels before a storm, not threatening, but alive with the imminence of something that is already real, already present, already fully formed in the dimension it inhabits before it crosses into the one that can be perceived. And some of you have been feeling exactly that quality in the atmosphere around a particular connection or a particular situation. Something coming, something real, something that your deeper knowing has already been tracking even while your conscious mind was occupied elsewhere. A pattern that sometimes emerges in moments like this is a kind of retrospective clarity where communication arrives and the person receiving it suddenly understands, looking back, that all the small signals they had been noticing, the shift in someone's energy, the quality of recent interactions, the way certain things were said or pointedly not said, were all pointing toward exactly this. Were all the advanced tremors of something that was building toward expression. And that retrospective clarity, when it arrives, tends to bring with it the quiet confirmation that one's own instincts were accurate all along, that the sensing was real, that the attentiveness was warranted. And there is something quietly powerful about that confirmation. Because for many people who have been navigating the uncertain territory of a charged but unresolved connection, the internal sensing, the feeling that something is present, that something is building, that the ordinary surface of interactions is carrying more than it appears to, can be a source of doubt as much as information. The inner voice that notices these things tends to be met sooner or later by a louder voice that questions whether it is simply projecting, whether it is reading meaning into things that are meaningless, whether the attentiveness itself is a form of wishful interpretation rather than accurate perception. And a pattern worth noticing here is that for people who are genuinely sensitive to the emotional undercurrents of their connections, the instinct tends to be more accurate than the doubt. The sensing tends to be real. And the communication that may be approaching may be arriving in part to confirm exactly that. This reflection invites you to consider what signals you have already been receiving in the quality of someone's recent presence or absence, in the texture of recent exchanges, in the small shifts that didn't entirely fit the ordinary pattern, and whether, placed in sequence, they begin to suggest something your instincts may already have been quietly assembling. Here's the thing about the kind of communication that arrives after a period of building. It tends to carry more than its literal content. It tends to carry everything that preceded it, the hesitation, the preparation, the private struggle of a person working toward the courage to say what they actually mean to someone who actually matters to them. And receiving that kind of communication well, with the quality of attention it deserves, with the presence of someone who understands that what is being offered represents a genuine act of trust, requires something from the recipient that not every moment asks for. It requires stillness, the willingness to actually hear rather than simply to process, to let what is being said land in its full weight rather than immediately filtering it through the interpretive machinery of what was expected or feared. An energy that may be present here is the invitation to practice exactly that quality of stillness in advance of the moment it may be needed. Not the performed kind, not the careful neutrality that is actually a form of management, but the genuine kind, the kind that comes from being sufficiently rooted in your own sense of self that you don't need to react to what arrives before you have fully received it, the kind that allows a significant communication to be what it actually is before you decide what to do with it. That quality of reception is one of the most generous things one person can offer another. And it is also, perhaps counterintuitively, one of the most powerful because it creates the conditions for the most complete version of the truth to be offered, rather than the version calibrated to manage an anticipated reaction. This reflection invites you to consider what you would most want to hear from this person, not the version filtered through what seems likely or realistic, but the version your most honest interior experience would actually welcome. And whether you can allow yourself to be genuinely open to some version of that arriving. An energy that may be present in this moment is one of disclosure moving toward its moment. And what is worth sitting with here is the particular experience of being on the receiving end of something that someone else has needed courage to say. Because there is an asymmetry in that moment, the person speaking has done the harder work of arriving at the honesty and choosing to voice it, while the person receiving is being handed something whose full significance may take longer to process than the moment of its arrival allows. And a pattern worth noticing here is that the first response to a significant disclosure is not always, perhaps not even usually, the most accurate, reflection of what the receiving person actually feels. The initial reaction tends to be shaped by surprise, by the gap between what was expected and what arrived, by the particular emotional weather of that specific moment. The truer response often lives a little deeper and arrives a little later, once the initial intensity of the moment has had time to settle. This is worth keeping in mind, not as a reason to distrust your first response, but as a reason to give yourself permission to not be entirely defined by it, to allow the processing some space, to resist the pressure, internal or external, to arrive immediately at a definitive position on something that may deserve more time and reflection than the moment of its arrival provides. Real things, genuinely significant communications, tend to benefit from being sat with, turned over, allowed to reveal their full dimensions before a response is formed that claims to represent the whole of what you feel. A theme worth sitting with here is the relationship between what we hear and what we understand, because those two things are not always identical in the moment of a significant conversation. Words carry multiple layers of meaning. The literal content and the emotional content, and the subtext and the thing underneath the subtext that the speaker themselves may not have fully consciously articulated. And learning to hear across all of those registers simultaneously, to receive not just the words, but the full human complexity of what is being offered through them, is one of the more demanding and more rewarding capacities available in a close relationship. An energy appearing here is the suggestion that this particular capacity may be called upon in the relatively near future, and that bringing it to the conversation rather than receiving only its surface may be what allows the exchange to reach its full potential. This reflection invites you to consider how you tend to listen in the moments that matter most, whether you are fully present to what is being said or whether part of your attention is already forming a response, managing an emotion, or protecting yourself from the full arrival of what you are hearing and what it might look like to listen differently in this particular moment. And this is where it gets quietly significant, because a communication of real weight, the kind that required genuine courage to form and genuine trust to deliver, tends to change something in the space between two people, regardless of how it is received. It shifts the atmosphere. It alters the quality of what both people now know about each other and about the connection they share. And while that shift can feel disorienting in the immediate moment of its occurrence, it almost always creates something more honest than what existed before it, more authentic, more real. A foundation that, whatever its specific contours, is built on a truer version of both people than the one that existed in the more carefully managed territory of the pre-disclosure relationship. And more honest tends over time to be more livable, more capable of being built from, more solid beneath the feet of both people as they navigate what comes next. Because the thing about a connection that has been allowed to become fully honest, where the significant truths have been spoken and received and processed, however imperfectly, is that it becomes capable of bearing a different quality of weight than a connection that has been maintained through the careful mutual management of what each person is permitted to know. The air in an honest relationship, even a complicated one, tends to be cleaner, and clean air tends to support a different quality of life than the alternative. And that cleaner air, that particular quality of spaciousness that arrives when two people are no longer navigating around a significant unspoken thing is worth understanding as one of the genuinely precious outcomes available from this kind of exchange. Not just the content of what is said, but the change in atmosphere that results from its having been said. The way the space between two people feels different once it no longer contains the particular density of something significant that neither of them was naming. That difference is not small. It is, in fact, one of the most tangible forms that emotional freedom tends to take in the context of a relationship. And an energy appearing here suggests that some of you may be approaching exactly that kind of release, the particular lightness of a space that has been cleared by honesty of what was previously weighing it down. This reflection invites you to consider what becomes possible in this connection on the other side of a genuine, honest, fully received exchange. What quality of relationship might exist between you and this person once both of you are standing in the same honest light, and whether that possibility feels like something worth moving toward. The closing energy of this reflection has a quality of quiet anticipation to it, not the anxious kind, the kind that belongs to someone who has done sufficient inner work that they can approach a significant moment with more curiosity than dread, more openness than armor, more genuine interest in what is actually true than investment in any particular version of the outcome. That quality of orientation, curious, present, genuinely available, is perhaps the most useful thing you can bring to whatever conversation may be approaching. The closing energy of this reflection has a quality of quiet anticipation to it, not the anxious kind, the kind that belongs to someone who has done sufficient inner work that they can approach a significant moment with more curiosity than dread, more openness than armor, more genuine interest in what is actually true than investment in any particular version of the outcome. That quality of orientation, curious, present, genuinely available, is perhaps the most useful thing you can bring to whatever conversation may be approaching. And it is worth considering for a moment what it actually means to be genuinely available for what is coming. Not available in the passive sense, not simply present in the physical sense of being reachable, but available in the deeper sense of having done enough of your own interior work that the arrival of something significant doesn't immediately trigger the full repertoire of defensive responses that previous experience may have installed. Of being present enough in your own sense of self that you can be moved by what arrives without being destabilized by it. Of having enough trust in your own capacity to navigate complexity that you don't need to pre-manage the outcome before it has had the chance to reveal itself. That quality of deep availability is, in some ways, the most intimate thing one person can offer another in a moment of significant communication. And it is what transforms an ordinary exchange into something genuinely connective. This reflection invites you to consider what it would mean for you to be completely, unhurriedly, genuinely available for this conversation, not performing readiness, not managing the moment, but simply being fully present in the most honest, unguarded version of yourself, and whether there is any preparation, internal or otherwise, that would support that quality of presence. Because here is what tends to be true about the communications that matter most. They don't only deliver information, they deliver an invitation. An invitation to be more honest than the previous configuration of the relationship allowed. An invitation to let someone know something real about who you are and what you feel and what you actually want. An invitation to step into a quality of connection that wasn't available before the conversation happened. And whether that invitation is accepted and how it is accepted tends to matter more in the longer arc of things than any single detail of what is said or not said in the moment itself. Whatever is coming, you are more prepared for it than the surprise of its approach might suggest. The preparation wasn't always visible, it wasn't always experienced as preparation. But it happened nonetheless in the quiet processing, in the honest self examination, in the gradual deepening of your understanding of what you actually need and what you actually want and what you are actually willing to offer in the most real, most unguarded, most fully present version of yourself. That preparation is with you now. It will be with you when the silence breaks. Trust it. Trust yourself inside it. And when the call comes in, whatever form, at whatever moment it finally arrives, be there for it. Fully, honestly, completely there. That presence is the only thing this moment requires of you. And it is, as it turns out, exactly enough.